This episode was brought to you by Pen Tester Academy, the leader in online cybersecurity education. Join over 10,000 professionals from 90 countries to learn security online. Also brought to you by Hacker Arsenal, artillery for cyber warriors. Visit us on hackerarsenal.com to check out our latest attack defense gadgets. I'm Marley Oxenholm from Pen Tester Academy TV, and welcome to our show, Access Point, where we spotlight cybersecurity companies and give an inside look at the people and technology behind the latest advancements in the industry. I'm joined today by John Wilson, who is a field CTO at the company Agari. John, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Marley. My pleasure.
All right, I got a lot of great questions here, so you're ready to get started?
Fire away.
All right, let's get down to business. Why do so many attacks begin with email?
Well, I think there's really two reasons. First of all, email is ubiquitous. If you want to reach somebody at a company, goodbye telephone. It's very tough. You can't just dial the main number anymore and ask for, John Smith and expect you're going to get routed to them. And if you do, you're going to get their voicemail. So email is a way where you actually can reach individuals, and the criminals know this. The second thing is, the old adage on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Well, with email, it's very much the same thing. If someone calls me on the phone and says they're Ravi Katad, I'm going to know that they're not Ravi because I know Ravi's voice. But if an email is sent, I don't know exactly, typing looks the same on the screen, whether it was typed by, Ravi or some criminal. So therefore, email is a very effective way to hide one's identity on the internet.
Fair enough. All right. And now how exactly does the Agari platform work?
Yeah, it starts with a lot of data. So we actually look at metadata relating to 7.5 billion with a B email messages every single day. And we've been doing that for about the last 5 or 6 years. So that data comes into a pipeline where it's sort of carved off and analyzed and sort of aggregated, and then we use it to build models. One of those models is used to help our customers protect their customers from people impersonating them. We call that solution Customer Protect, and it's part of our platform. And then the other half of it is protecting that organization's employees from inbound attacks, people posing as any other company out there on the internet. And to do that, we build models of good. As our CEO Ravi was saying, effectively, most companies out there build models of bad. They're looking for, does this thing coming in look like something bad we've seen before? Ours, really, we flip that on its head. We say, does this look like something that's good before? Does this look like good behavior? And since we have so much data to compare that to, we can get a very strong signal out of that. And then ultimately, if the message is determined to be bad, we block it, we quarantine it, we give the user a warning, depending on the level of confidence and depending on the customer's desire. Some customers feel that it's better to simply quarantine a message. Others want to block it outright. And so there's varying levels that you can use to take action against a potential threat.
Wonderful. Okay, very cool. And so now I'm wondering, how does Agari leverage AI to help with the solution?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny. Every company today, it's a buzzword. Oh, AI, machine learning, big data. And yes, we use all of those things at Agari. But I would say that the difference here is that it's kind of, as I said before, we are modeling what good looks like. And it's very hard to look like you are good, very easy to avoid looking bad. And that's, I think, the big difference in the way we use AI. Now, the other thing is we build models at a number of levels. So, for example, we model all the way down to the address level. Then we model out to the domain level, we model out to the organizational level, and then ultimately we build global models. You'll notice, for example, or we notice in our data, when we're dealing with, for example, a real estate brokerage company, their patterns of sending and receiving what is good for them and what is normal for them is very different than that we might see at a bank or an airline. Each of these industries, each of these companies have their own patterns. And that's why we have those models that work on so many different levels at different levels of granularity.
Wonderful. Okay. And so now I'm wondering, can you describe a scenario where Agari was able to help stop an attack?
Oh my goodness, Marley, there's been so many. Well, Ravi already mentioned, for example, the Docusign attack. What happened there was criminals sent out messages that claimed to be from Docusign. But if you looked closely, it wasn't Docusign.com, it was Docusign minus the I.com. And it's a very subtle change, but the human eye is designed to correct things. Imagine how many times have you written a sentence, read it 6 times over, and then realized you had the word "the" twice in a row.
Yep. Too many.
The human brain, we correct these things, and criminals rely on that. It's all about social engineering. But another type of attack that we stopped, and this was actually at our own company. Shortly after we received a round of funding and we brought Ravi on as our new CEO, obviously there was quite a bit of press about that. And what ended up happening was criminals, they read the news just like everybody else, and we started getting messages to our CFO, to other members of our HR and finance team, from various, criminals posing as our new CEO, I guess counting on the fact that maybe we haven't all met him yet. Maybe, and they were asking for things like wire transfers and tax documents.
Oh my gosh.
Things of that nature. And of course we stopped all of those, and actually we all had a good laugh. Like, they did enough research to know that we had had new funding and a new CEO. They probably should have read the next part, which said what we do as a company, because
right.
they realized perhaps we weren't the best target out there.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. It seems like they won't stop at any lengths to really get into someone's email at that point. Yeah.
Indeed, yes.
All right. And so now I'm wondering, what is the role of human perception in security? Do you think phishing training is effective?
Yeah, I wouldn't not do phishing training. You look at all these companies that do phishing training, and they come in and they phish all the employees, and 60% of the people fall for it. And then they do some training, and then they do another test, and now only 10% of the people fall for it. That's a huge victory, right? Well, no, not really, because what it means is that if a criminal sends 10 messages into that organization, the odds are extremely high. In fact, some might say about 90%, that at least one of those people in the organization who received that message are going to open it and act upon it. So, phishing training is great, but it does not solve this problem. The other thing is, do you really want your employees having to become email experts, or would you rather hire the best finance person, the best HR person? Do you want their productivity sapped as they have to go and read email headers and study every little thing and hover over every link? Or do you want them to simply be able to trust what they receive in their inbox?
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. And so now, how do advanced email threats circumvent traditional email security solutions like Secure Email Gateway?
Exactly. So these solutions are designed to find things that are bad that they have seen before. So all you have to do is come up with a novel attack. So the way that most security gateways work is, first of all, they look at the source of the message, the reputation of the server sending it. And they're very good at stopping things coming out of botnets, because they know that's a botnet. And secondarily, they're scanning the content. So in the content, if you use certain words like Viagra or Cialis, chances are it's going to be a spam message, assuming you're not one of the companies that actually makes or markets those products. Or they're looking for a known virus signature. They're looking for a link that is known to be bad. So what the criminals do is they will craft a piece of malware that has never been seen before, which is sandbox aware. If they're going to use a link, they're going to use a link that is a one-off link. For example, the attack on the DNC, every one of those links was different. So John Podesta's link was different than the link sent to the folks who did not fall for that ruse. Finally, there are many attacks that do not use any sort of payload whatsoever. They're simply asking for tax information, for credentials, for a wire transfer, things of this nature. So there's really nothing for the traditional systems to latch onto. So the other thing that they're doing is they're leveraging public cloud infrastructure, things like Gmail, things like Office 365, things like Amazon, that both legitimate companies as well as criminals can just as easily get their hands on and use. And in this way, they're able to fly below the radar, and those other systems miss them because their algorithms were never designed to capture that type of attack.
Wow, that's absolutely crazy. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. And so now I'm wondering then, if a device is stolen or an email account gets compromised, how can you protect an organization at that point? Yeah,
absolutely. Now that is a huge challenge for every company, and that is an area where we're actually getting better. But I'll give you an example. On May 3rd of last year, there was a Google Docs worm that went around. People received a message that looked like someone was sharing a Google document with them. That link actually was then asking them to authorize an application called Google Docs to have access to their email and to their contacts. And most people, you see this, and you see a pop-up from Google that says, do you wish to authorize Google Docs to access your email and your contacts? And most people are like, well, yes, of course. It's
Right,
Google, and
usually.
Google's asking me to do this. Well, it turns out every one of those messages had an extra header in there that, if sent by a normal human being, would not have appeared there. There was a header that said this message was sent via an API rather than via the normal web interface. And
Wow.
there are signals, artifacts in the headers of an email which give away even that very difficult type of identity deception, what we refer to internally as type 4, which means nothing to the folks I'm sure that are on the talking today, but I will explain it a little bit more in a moment.
Yeah.
A type 4 is effectively what we call an account takeover. So when somebody that you legitimately do business with has had their account compromised, and then the criminal is leveraging that account to get into your organization.
Okay, very interesting. And now I know you kind of just touched on it briefly, but what are the different forms of digital deception and how are they employed in all these attacks?
Absolutely. So the first kind that we see, and it was very popular a few years ago, is what we call spoofing. There is a flaw in the basic email protocol, and actually a flaw that Agari and the rest of the industry helped to solve in 2012, which allows people to literally use somebody else's email address to send a message. And so that was the technique used for many, many years, and thanks to a standard known as DMARC, that is much more difficult to pull off nowadays. Now, some companies haven't implemented the standard, but by and large, the criminals realize that that's very much diminishing returns to use that technique. Another technique we've seen is what we refer to as a lookalike domain. I had a friend of a friend who was trying to rent an Airbnb to go on holiday. And they received an email from Airbnb-payments.com with all the instructions they needed to complete their payment to reserve this, to put down their deposit for this vacation home for a week. Unfortunately, Airbnb-payments has nothing to do with Airbnb. It was registered by some other individual, and that individual was able to use that lookalike domain. Now there's other types. You could use a Cyrillic character, for example, that visually is indistinguishable from an English character, but which when put into a domain name in the browser is going to look, or in an email message, is going to look exactly the same. We call those lookalike attacks. And then finally, the third type of true attack is what we refer to as a display name attack. Every email address has, if you look at the from header of an email, there is a display portion, and then there's the actual underlying address. Now, chances are most non-technical users don't even really look at that address anymore. They're looking at the name. Think about the last time you saw an email address in your, on your iPhone, on your, your Samsung, whatever mobile device you may use. You don't see that. You see the name of the person. And criminals know this. They can simply go get a free AOL account, a free Gmail account, and when it asks their name, they say, my name is Ravi Katad. Well, and then they send an email off, and if somebody doesn't know to look at the underlying address, well, guess what? They're going to think they're dealing with Ravi. So those are the three common types. Now, I mentioned a type 4 earlier in one of those questions. That's what we refer to as an account takeover. That's where it's the legitimate account. Either the person has stolen the device or in some other way, perhaps planted malware where they're able to remotely control the machine, or they simply have the credentials of the individual, so they're able to log in from their own computer and then send a message, but using the account of that intermediary. That's what we call a type 4 attack or an account takeover.
I see. It's crazy how important it is just to be detail-oriented, even when you're reading your emails for security as well, just to pick up on those little discrepancies.
Absolutely. And and it goes back to the idea, do you really want to have to train every individual in your organization to understand all of these nuances and understand how to look at that? Or do you want them to just be able to trust their inbox?
Right, and just do their jobs. Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay, and lastly, what does your company roadmap look like for 2018?
Absolutely. So, well, first and foremost, we really want to do an even better job on this account takeover problem, these type 4 style of attacks. They are becoming more commonplace. One of the challenges, of course, with any AI model is that it's helpful to understand when you see a deviation from normal to be able to classify that deviation. We're seeing, in many cases, we are catching the attacks today, but we're not being able to articulate why we caught it immediately. What we're looking to do moving forward is to utilize even more features, which is a term used in data science, to better identify these attacks, as well as to better explain that that is what is happening here, that in fact, this one is anomalous because it is an account takeover. So that's the first area, and there's two others. We're looking into the idea of a product we're going to call, the working name is Breach Protect. And the idea behind Breach Protect is no matter how good your solution is, occasionally things slip through. And that thing that slips through may come in the form of, a message from your SIM, an alert from your SIM that is telling you that, we're seeing some anomalous activity on this particular workstation, or it may come from an end user report. Hey, my computer's acting funny, or I got this odd email. What Breach Protect allows you to do is to take that information in, and then go back to the root cause, which almost all the time is email, to figure out where the email was that started that, and then more importantly, see who else in your organization may have been impacted by that same campaign. By looking and pivoting on different aspects of the campaign, such as the subject line, the purported sender, the server, the infrastructure, things of these nature, you can identify potential other victims of the attack, and then with one button press, remediate the email side of it. So effectively, after the fact, quarantine all of the messages which were not quarantined in the first place. Again, I would love to tell you that Agari is perfect and we catch every single thing. No vendor could ever say that, including us. But if you can go and remediate the email side of it and then have your punch list of who you now have to go and have a look at, there's nothing worse than you go and you clean what you thought was the infection and patient 0 is still sitting out there infecting everybody all over the organization. And so that's the point of Breach Protect. And then finally, and this one's kind of a personal favorite of mine because I've been very closely involved with it, we've been embarking on an experiment we refer to as active defense. If you look at, offensive cyber, which is, basically what nation states do against each other. They go out and they attack back against bad people. And then you look at passive defense, which every one of us does with a spam filter or a firewall or end user training. There's that gray zone in the middle. And we call that gray zone active defense. And it involves things like deception, things like honeypots, things like beacons in email. Well, what we've been able to do experimentally is actually interact with the scammers that are targeting our customers and targeting our company and learn more about them through a variety of techniques. I won't go into all of the details, but effectively we're able to, in many cases, actually identify where they are, who they are, what their motivation is, and who may be aiding and abetting them within the confines of the U.S. or other places where we do actually have, mutual legal assistance treaties in place, the ability to actually go and make arrests. And we've actually referred one case to law enforcement already, doing this on a very minute scale as a lab experiment. So we're giving some consideration into perhaps rolling that out as a solution. I like to compare it to, if you think of passive defense as a turtle, some creature tries to eat a turtle, the turtle pulls his head and his arms and legs in, and hopes for the best, hopes that nobody cracks that shell. Active defense is more like the porcupine. If you leave the porcupine alone, nothing's going to happen. But boy, you bite that porcupine, you're going to remember it, and probably next time you're going to go after the turtle, not the porcupine.
I love that. I love that analogy. John, this was so informative. Thank you so much for sitting down and discussing all this with me today. This was very eye-opening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marley. It's been a real pleasure as well. You have a great day.
Absolutely. You too, and I look forward to seeing more of you guys in the future.
I hope so.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook so you don't miss out on any of the latest cybersecurity news. This episode is brought to you by Pen Tester Academy, the leader in online cybersecurity education. Join over 10,000 professionals from 90 countries to learn security online. Also brought to you by Hacker Arsenal, artillery for cyber warriors. Visit us on hackerarsenal.com to check out our latest attack defense gadgets. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.